Your Excellencies, members of Ifimes Council, members of Ifimes, ladies and gentlemen, dear friends. Allow me to welcome you on behalf of International Institute for Middle East and Balkan Studies from Ljubljana, the organizers of today's lecture of Mr. Ben-Dror Yemini with the title Situation in the Middle East After the War in Gaza. Special regards goes to His Excellency Budimir Lončar, former Foreign Minister of Socialist Federative Republic of Yugoslavia and President of Ifimes Advisory Board, and Dr. Ernest Petrić, member of Ifimes Advisory Board, former President of Constitutional Court of Slovenia. A special welcome and gratitude goes to our guest today from Israel, the acclaimed and highly respected Mr. Ben-Dror Yemini. I wish Mr. Yemini pleasant stay in our wonderful country. I would also like to thank the Embassy of the State of Israel based in Jerusalem and to Ambassador Mr. Shmuel Myron for a good cooperation we have for many years now. Ben-Dror Yemini, born in Tel Aviv, is a researcher, journalist, and lecturer. He studies Humanities and History in Tel Aviv University, and later on he studied law. After a short term in the public service and as the advisor of Minister of Immigration and the spokesman of the ministry, Yemini began his career as a journalist and essayist. He worked as a lawyer and was a partner in law firm. In 2003, he became the opinion editor of the daily newspaper Maariv and also published many articles and essays in other journals. He published a series of research articles about the Israeli-Arab conflict in which he examined the issues of genocide, refugees, human rights violations, and the status of Israeli Arabs, multiculturalism, and the status of women. All these articles included a comparative study about each topic. In September 2014, Yemini published his book, The Industry of Lies, that after 2 weeks topped the bestseller list. In his lecture, our guest will present his view on the situations in the Middle East and on the Israeli-Arab conflict. And now I give the floor to Mr. Yemini.
Thank you very much for hosting me. I cannot repeat all the names and all the dignitaries that are here with us, but thank you all for coming. You know, I'm a journalist before everything else, and they say about journalists that journalists are the people who know almost nothing about almost everything. So, not like professors, and we have here some professors, don't take it personally, that know almost everything about almost nothing. So in order to solve my very personal problem, I got married to a professor, so I live in peace. Why I'm saying it? I'm saying it because as a journalist, you might ask, okay, who are you to tell us about the Middle East? And that's exactly why I decided to conduct some research that unfortunately are not conducted many times by academics. I could allow myself. And I did it because of one more reason, which is a kind of, in a way, a personal reason. Because for many years, I was a peace activist. When I say peace activist, I mean that I participated many meetings with high officials of the PLO. I went all the way years ago to meet Mr. Yasser Arafat, the chairman of the PLO before the Oslo Agreement. I met him in Tunisia, which was quite an experience. I think I was not the first Israeli who met him, not at all, but one of the first before the Oslo Agreement. And I did it because, as a human being, as a peace activist, as an Israeli, I wanted to promote peace. I wanted to understand. I wanted to deliver the message of understanding. And we know history. In the 90s, after I met Yasser Arafat, we had the Oslo Agreement, 1993. And many of us, I would say most of us, Israelis and Palestinians, we had a lot of hopes that peace is going to prevail. Many hopes. But I have to admit that something happened during the 90s. It's not only terror, because terror is always part, not that I like it, not that I want it, but sometimes the opposition groups are trying to terrorize any peace efforts. And that's what they did. So it's not because of terror that I became a bit pessimistic. It was because of other reasons. Because in '94, as a peace activist, I do remember, and I cannot forget, the speech of Yasser Arafat, who I met again after he came to Gaza, if you remember, after the Oslo Agreement. He gave a speech in Johannesburg when he said that actually, I don't mean peace. I mean, to those of you who know something about the history of Islam, I mean something like Hudaybiyah agreement, which means a kind of manipulation. This is my way to manipulate the Israelis. And it happened again 2 years after in Stockholm, in a big meeting with Arab diplomats, when he said that actually the whole story is of the peace process is in order to not to bring peace, but to bring destruction upon Israel. Now, what I'm saying now, it's not easy, I know. But for me, as a peace activist, it was a kind of what are you doing with it? What we are doing as human beings when we find out some new realities that are the total opposite of what we believe. What we are doing as human beings. And I have to admit that I tried as a human being, as a peace activist, as a journalist in that time, to find excuses. And I told myself something like, look, after so many years of conflict, maybe he wants to appease his own opposition. Maybe this is a way to talk to them, because he had opposition and we had to admit it. I don't want to ignore facts. But you give yourself excuses in order to understand this kind of dissonance, voices. But it was a problem. It was a problem for me, it was a problem for the public opinion, it was a problem for the peace camp in Israel. And in Israel, as I guess you know the Israeli society, we have a big peace camp. I would say half of the population are always against the government. This is Israel. Israel is a democracy. Okay, we kept on in the 90s. Let's give peace a chance. It's not only a song. It's our reality. And after all, even after what Chairman Arafat said, we still had hopes that peace is going to prevail. And I don't want to ignore one thing. We also had an Israeli opposition to peace. I don't want to manipulate and to tell you that it was only the Palestinian side. Not at all. We had the tragedy of the assassination of the Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin. We cannot forget it. We had. But I don't want to give a lesson in history. It's not my main story. We kept on. At the end of the 90s, we had the Camp David summit by, again, Yasser Arafat, Ehud Barak, who was the prime minister at that time of Israel, and, of course, the president of the United States, Bill Clinton. The summit collapsed. Unfortunately, they did not achieve peace. Unfortunately. I wish they could achieve peace, but they did not. The two sides, which mean Yasser Arafat and Ehud Barak, told the President of the United States, Bill Clinton, you know what, you know us. You spent with us 2 weeks in Camp David, behind closed doors. You know what, you should put your proposal coming from outside on the table. It took some months and he did it. And we all know the Clinton proposal, that's how it's called. We all know, I guess, those who are interested in the Middle East conflict, they know the Clinton parameters. To those of you who don't know, 2 states for 2 peoples. Even something which is highly difficult for the Israelis, partition of Jerusalem, which months ago was even unbearable to mention, unconceivable to mention. From the Israeli point of view, I have to admit it. I have to say, it was like an earthquake for the Israelis. Partition of Jerusalem, the holy city. We prayed 3 times a day to Jerusalem, even if we are not religious people. But that's what he put on the table. Partition of Jerusalem. Almost 67 borders with the big blocks that will be part of Israel, and land swap, something. That's what the Clinton done. And the refugees, it will be under an international fund that will help them to resettle, to be part of the Palestinian state. And a very symbolic, it even was under debate, but a very symbolic right of return to Israel, but in neglectable numbers. And what happened is that we had 2 formal responses, one of the Palestinian Authority and one of the Israeli government. Now, I'm telling this story before I will say, some of you probably know what was the answer of Israel, what was the answer of the Palestinians, but before that, I have to tell you that something which really bothered me. I read many articles about what happened in that time, the end of 2000, the beginning of 2001. What really happened? And it's very, very interesting because, you know, the academics between us, among us, know that when you need something, you don't go to secondary resources, references, you go to the original documents, as long as you have it, not to the interpretations. And I read so many articles about what happened with the Clinton proposal that most of them, I don't want to say all because it's always not all, but most of them were based not on the primary resources, but on the secondary resources. Which was like, why? You have the official answer of the Israeli government. You have the official response of the Palestinian Authority. Why do you have to manipulate everything in order to say that Israel never said yes and the Palestinians never said no? Which is, sorry to say, I'm not a diplomat, it was a lie. Because the official documents show in a very clear way that the Israeli government said yes, the Palestinian Authority said no. Clear cut. More than that. More than that. Ben-Dror Sultan, he was the mighty ambassador of the Saudi Arabia in Washington. Whoever is familiar with the Middle East knows the name. Until recently, he was the intelligence minister. Because of internal problems, he's not anymore in Saudi Arabia. But in that time, he was one of the strongest people in the Arab world. In the very day when Yasser Arafat came to Washington to deliver his answer to the Bill Clinton proposal, in that very day he met Ben-Dror Sultan, but not alone. He was accompanied by the Egyptian ambassador, maybe also by the Moroccan ambassador. But he met him in Rich Hotel in Washington, a very known hotel. And he had some kind of bad feelings. Why? Because the whole Arab world, the whole Arab states, leaderships, all the leaders of Arab, they accepted the Clinton plan, and we have to say, they accepted, they did not reject. It was a historical turning point, no less than that. Because if we remember the partition resolution that was rejected by all the Arab world, it was a turning point. We are accepting the existence of Israel as a state in the Middle East. That was the meaning of accepting the Clinton proposal. Not only that, but also as a Jewish state, a nation state, just like when we are here now in ex-Yugoslavia, so you know exactly what does it mean, nation state. We accept Israel as a nation state. A very positive turning point, which was supposed to have a kind of impact on the response of Yasser Arafat. And Ben-Dror Sultan, in that very meeting, minutes before Yasser Arafat went to the White House, told him, you have to say yes. It's not only that you have to say yes, but we all support it. Don't say, as you said before, well, I cannot do something which is not accepted by the Arab leaders. Which he said before, rightly so or not rightly so. But he said, look, the king of Saudi Arabia, the president of Egypt, Mubarak in the time, the king of Morocco, the king of Jordan, we all give our support. Go and say yes. But something in the atmosphere with the aides of Yasser Arafat, something in the atmosphere, he understood that something is going wrong. Then he told him one sentence. If you are going to the White House and say no, it's not going to be a tragedy. It is going to be a crime. Not my words, the words of Ben-Dror Sultan. We know what happened. Arafat went to the White House, and sorry to say, I'm not a diplomat again, to remind you, he committed a crime because he said no. . Now, how do I know what happened in the room in Rich Hotel? How comes that I know? Because it's not my story. It's the story of Ben-Dror Ben Sultan himself. He was interviewed to the New Yorker, a very known magazine in the United States. Now, he could deny and say, well, they misquoted me. You know, politicians, that's what they do many times. I was misquoted, it's not mine. No, the opposite. What he did is he put it in the website of Saudi Arabia website. This is, by the way, he repeated it. It was not the only one time that he said. So that's what happened. Now, I'm going back to history just because we cannot understand the new realities in the Middle East without understanding what happened in the process. And we know what happened immediately after. The Intifada, the second Intifada. So many people, unfortunately, were killed. Palestinians, Israelis, unfortunately. Human lives were lost. And then the disengagement from Gaza. It was under a huge debate in Israel. Under a huge debate. The then Prime Minister, Ariel Sharon, decided about the unilateral disengagement. I was in favor of the disengagement. I did not like the unilateral, but it was my opinion. But it was carried out. It is very important to remind us all that it happened because so many people are saying now that the settlements are the biggest obstacle to peace. It is an obstacle. I'm not a politician, I'm not a spokesman of the government, so I can tell you, yes, it is an obstacle. I'm against it. But I'm against it. For myself, it's my opinion. I'm a researcher, I'm a journalist. I'm against it. For myself. But this is not the obstacle to peace. It was proved 2 times. In 2 peace agreements. It was carried out after the peace agreement with Egypt. It was carried out unilaterally in the disengagement. So it is a problem. I'm not saying that it is not a problem. But this is not the biggest problem. So you might ask me, where is the biggest problem? Because if we know what are the parameters for peace, which are about the Clinton plan, how comes that we cannot achieve it? I'll tell you why. Because it was presented again, the same kind of plan, by Ehud Olmert in 2008. The Olmert proposal. And it was rejected again by Abu Mazen, Mahmoud Abbas. It was rejected. And why it was rejected? He gave the reason. He doesn't need me. But he gave the reason. He was interviewed not 1 time, something like 20 times. In the United States, in the Arab world, he was interviewed again and again. Why did you? And he said, because of the refugees. What do you mean by refugees? Yes, there is a problem of refugees. So let me tell you some sentences about refugees. Yes, we all know about the Nakba, the Palestinian catastrophe that happened in 48, Independence War. But why did it happen? It happened because they rejected the partition resolution of the UN 29th of November. It just happened. And they invaded Israel. Many of them escaped. Many of them were forced out, and we have to admit it. I'm not coming here to manipulate. People were forced out. But let me tell you something. Yes, it happened. The problem of refugees was created in that time. But, just to remind you, in that time, when we are speaking in the 40s and before the 40s, it was the norm. It was the international norm. It happened in every conflict. It happened in every conflict. 12 million ethnic Germans were forced out. 1.4 million of Poles and Ukrainians were forced out. 14 million of Hindus and Pakistanis were forced out. Millions of Greeks and Turks were forced out. Not because I like this kind of solution. I'm telling you what was the norm of that time. 52 million people became refugees because of conflicts. Because in that time, and you know Europe better than me, only after the Second World War, we are speaking about more than 20 million people here in Europe that were forced out of their homelands. How many of them are refugees now? We know the answer. 0. The answer is 0. So unfortunately, the Palestinians were perpetuated as refugees for so many years. Unfortunately, they are suffering. I'm not ignoring the fact that they are suffering, but it's not because of Israel. It's because the Arab world decided to leave them as an open wound, but not because of Israel. It happened in every conflict. It was solved in every conflict, but it was never solved in the Israeli-Arab conflict. Unfortunately, I'm saying it unfortunately because people are suffering. So if we get back to Abu Mazen, when the proposal was on the table, he said no, because I have the problem of refugees. Now, if you want a state, which I do respect for myself, Palestinian state, yes, I'm saying yes. You cannot say that your own people should go to another state. It doesn't make sense. If you want a state, they are part of you people. They are part of your state. Unless you want something else. And when people speak about the right of return, just think about it in terms of Europe. I mean, think about it. Will Europe accept this kind of solution to the so many events of population exchange that took place here? Never. Think about the international community. They faced the problem, for example, in Cyprus. And a solution was proposed by the UN and the EU, the Kofi Annan plan. Let's adopt it. Now, what next? After the Gaza conflict, what next? In the new realities. So let me tell you, yes, we are facing new realities. We are facing new realities because some years ago, it all began with 2011, with the Arab Spring. And many of us were optimistic that new realities are going to prevail. Democracy, equality in the Arab world. We all want it as human beings. Nothing to do with being an Israeli or Palestinian or European. We want people to prosper. Unfortunately, it did not happen. Right now, we are facing not the Arab Spring, but the global jihad winter. And let's bear in mind, it has nothing to do, but nothing to do, with the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, because people are killed nowadays, almost every day in Nigeria, they are killed in Somalia, they are killed in Yemen, they are killed in Pakistan, they are killed in Afghanistan, they are killed also in Iraq and Syria. The global jihad is the biggest problem of the Muslim world because they are not killing Israelis and not Slovenians and not Americans. The global jihad is killing mainly Muslims. 99% of the victims of the global jihad are Muslims. But unfortunately, speaking about the global public opinion, I did not see demonstrations against the mass killing that is carried out by Islamists against Muslims. I didn't see, but so many demonstrations against Israel. How come? How come? I did not see, sorry to tell you, let's talk about realities. I did not see that young Muslims are going to fight against ISIS or IS or whatever, but I saw so many, thousands of them are going to fight with ISIS, unfortunately. And we have new realities. So what are you doing in this situation? If we get back to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, yes, we have a solution. Solutions that should be based on 2 states for 2 peoples. And I'm saying 2 states for 2 peoples because there is a huge difference between the 2 states for 2 peoples and the 2-state solution. It's very tricky, but we have to bear it in mind. 2 states for 2 peoples, it means that you respect the self-determination of the other one. So there is a huge difference. So when people are telling you we are supporting the 2-state solution, no, it's not enough. 2 states for 2 peoples. We have a solution. We have a solution even if many Israelis, and let's admit it, do not like it. And even if many Palestinians, and let's face it, do not like it. But we know what the solution is. It is not the most complicated conflict, as some people always say. We have a solution. It's not going to be easy, don't misunderstand me. Don't misunderstand me. I'm not saying that it's going to be easy. But we know the solution. It's not going to be easy for both sides. So what is the main obstacle? The main obstacle right now is that we are in a tide of the global jihad. Nothing which is unique to the Middle East conflict. As I said, it's happening without any connection to Israel. It's happening in so many other places. In Libya, one city was already declared as part of the Islamic Caliphate, Darna. It's happening in Nigeria, it's happening in Somalia, it's happening in Sinai, it's happening in Sinai. So we are facing a new reality. The Middle East is full of conflicts. The Middle East is full of paradoxes. And yes, I do have a problem with the global public opinion. Yes, I do have a problem because many times they ignore the realities. How nice it is, how progressive it is to blame Israel in every problem. But what Israel has to do? What Israel has to do with the so many thousands that are killed every month without any connection to Israel? And they are ignored. And Muslims are paying the price many times because of this ignorance. We have to face it, not in order to justify Israel, because Israel is not perfect. Sometimes Israel deserves criticism. And believe me, we don't need their opinions to do it. We do it ourselves. Read the Israeli newspapers. So much criticism against the government. We don't need it. Sorry to tell you. We do it ourselves, and don't misunderstand me. Even if what I'm saying here sounds like trying to explain things, I do have a lot of criticism against my own government, and I do it and I publish it again and again in my newspaper. It is published also in English, so whoever wants can read it. But we have to look at the reality. And the reality right now is that new chapters are written with blood in the Middle East. New chapters. We have no idea what is going to happen next week. We don't know, just as all the experts, but all the experts did not know about the emerge of the global jihad with ISIS and so on. They didn't know. We don't know what's going to happen. But we have to look at the reality in order to understand that there is a solution to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, but it is not the most important conflict. The most important story of the Middle East, and not only of the Middle East, the problem is also here in Europe. Let's not ignore it. The majority of Muslims are against the global jihad. They are against. But the problem is that you don't need more than few hundreds, few thousand in every place in order to take over. So even if it's not the majority of Muslims, they are facing a problem. We are facing a problem. And the problem of us, the media and the academia, that many times we give the global jihad justifications. Oh, miserable people. Oh, it's because of colonialism. Oh, it's because of the Israeli occupation. We give them excuses. Enough with excuses. Let's look at the reality if we want to solve the problem globally, regionally. Peace will prevail when the industry of lies will collapse. When we will not manipulate ourselves in the media, in the academia. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you, Mr. Yemini. I would like to ask Mr. Ajaf to start with the discussion.
Thank you very much. I have my first question before we give this thought to others. Is you mentioned the 2 states and 2 people. This is in connection with the new law, the draft of law which will be in Knesset about that Israel is a Jewish state, and this is it also has connection with the new Arab initiative. I think is going through Jordan in the next week. Regarding this, I think this is the last one which will trying to find a way, not a peace process, but a way how to find the peace process in the Middle East, because you know, you mentioned also the situation in the Middle East with the Islamic states and that.
Okay, it's a very good question. The nationality law is kind of, let me say, I hope the ambassador of Israel does not hear what I'm going to say, because it's a kind of a very a political manipulation. Everyone knew in the first place that it's not going to pass. It's a kind of, you know, a political, an internal political debate among right-wingers in Israel. Unfortunately, and I have to criticize also my own Prime Minister, he's part of the debate. Not because we need it, because Israel was recognized in the partition resolution. It was mentioned, let me tell you, my friend, 29 times as a Jewish state. We don't need this kind of new law, to my opinion. And I published articles against the new law. I don't need it. I mean, Israel is recognized as a Jewish state. It's enough. By the international community, by the internal laws in Israel, by the Declaration of Independence. I don't need it. I don't need it.
Thank you very much.
So, no, about the second question. Yes, Jordan and the new initiatives, I for myself and big parts of the Israeli public opinion will welcome every new prospects for peace. We had enough, even if we disagree among ourselves, the Israelis, and we disagree. There are a lot of debates in the Israeli society. Even if we disagree, yes, the moment that peace will turn to be a real option, that from a support of 50% right now, it will emerge to 80%. I hope it will happen.
Did you accept also to negotiate with the new government of the Palestinian Authority? It's a government between Hamas and Fatah, so national unity. Are the governments ready to talk with them and to be a part of the solution?
My own
Your opinion.
my opinion, and I published it again and again, that I think the only one condition that Israel should put on the table is not an Israeli condition. It's the EU or the quartet by conditions. To those of you who don't know, it's mean no more violence, accepting previous agreements, and mutual recognition. That's what I, in my articles, offer the government. Don't say yes, don't say no, just say that you obey the international community preconditions. Don't put your own preconditions. Let's go for it. As long as right now, we have to put it in mind. Right now, but and we cannot ignore it. The Hamas is part of the global jihad. They speak about Rome just like ISIS. But I have to add something. The moment that the Hamas will accept the two-state solution for two states for two peoples, you know what? Why not? I accept everybody. You know what? If ISIS tomorrow, IS, will accept the existence of I don't know what, Jordan or Iraq or Syria, let's go for it. I mean, I'm not against anybody. I'm not against Al Qaeda. I have a problem with someone who is against my very existence. So if you ask me, let's talk with the Hamas. The moment that the Hamas will accept the international community by condition, we don't have to add anything.
Now who has Proszanie przedstawić się.
Andrei Umek, I would have a question for, you see, I think accepting the international agreements is a crucial question. Here I agree with you. I would go only one step farther back in time. Israel was founded by international agreement, which was reached in 1948, and Palestine was divided. This international agreement has never been accepted by Arab states. So I think, personally, and I would welcome your opinion on this question, I would definitely ask all Arab states and all Arab movements to accept the partition of Palestine. This is a fundamental question. And I would go a step further. The division of Palestine was reached because the leaders of Palestine supported Nazi regime in Germany and fought on the Nazi side. And the partition of Palestine is a consequence of this fact. Al-Husseini, who was uncle of Arafat, who spent all the war years in Berlin, and Arafat in Rome, if you didn't know this. So it clearly shows their political position. These two gentlemen established here in Yugoslavia at that time two SS Hunter divisions which massacred people around the Yugoslavia and beyond the borders. And this all led to the international agreement. And this international agreement must be acknowledged and must be respected. As Eastern German border moved 500 kilometers to the west, as Poland moved, all these international agreements are basis for the peace in Europe and in the world. The only exception to this at the present world today are Arab states. And I would like to commend this really terrible situation that after how many, 70 years, almost 60 years after World War II, the Arab world is not willing to acknowledge its crimes against humanity, fighting on the Nazi side, and accepting the consequences and punishment. And, by the way, its international agreement is also that the fighting on Nazi side means the loss of territory. Thank you very much.
Yeah, unfortunately, yes, the Mufti, Hajj Amir Hussein, supported Hitler in that time, unfortunately. And as a human being, I'm willing to forgive anybody. As a human being, as long as he accepts my existence. So, yes, you're completely right, but I do want new prospects, new hopes. Unfortunately, yes, you are right, I know, because partly, the global jihad is influenced by anti-Semitic terrorists that came together with the Nazis, together with the Mufti Haj Amir al-Husseini and Kauji and some others. Yes, I know. I think that me as a Jew, I think we did not forget the past, but we never asked for revenge. And it's not easy, believe me. We are human beings, and we have feelings and we have emotions. But correct me if I'm wrong, I don't remember even one terror operation of Jews against Germany. Because memory, yes. Revenge, no. And that's what I'm telling. And Israel is prospering, no doubt about it. Israel is prospering with all the problems. But let me tell you something. I'm telling my Palestinian friends, and I have many Palestinian friends from Israel, Israeli citizens, and from the territories. I'm telling them, enough with justifications to revenge, because it will not lead you to any place. Revenge is very destructive. Give hope. Give forgiveness, even if you have this kind of emotions about the Nakba. I feel sorry for them. I don't want to ignore their memory. Yes, they suffer. Yes, it happened, as I said here, to so many other peoples. It happened to more than 52 million people. But I do respect their memory. I do not respect those among us in the West, in the free world media and academia that give them justifications. That's what I don't like. But I do respect Palestinians. I do respect their memory. I do. I cannot respect those among us, professors and journalists, that give them again and again justifications to the hatred. I don't want it.
Next question.
Right, I don't need a mic. Thank you. My name, Professor Yemini. Yes, it's a very complex problem. Now, returning a bit to what you said.
Lako se predstavite da je vi?
I said it. So Ben-Dror is my name. I'm on behalf of the Slovenian Association for International Relations. Yeah. You finished by saying that within the present conditions of jihad, right, which encompasses practically the whole Arab world, well, a huge part of it, there is no chance. Well, the question which follows is, how do you see the further developments? Because it means there is no chance for a solution, the Palestinian-Israeli solution, because the Palestinian problem is part of the context. And now we come again to what you said at the beginning. You quoted an Arab word, right, which is sort of neither peace nor war manipulation, right? I'm not a scholar of Arabic, but we heard that before. For example, President Nasser, before the six-day war, apparently the speech, the sea is going to be red, you know, the blood, etc., etc. And then we hear again some explanations that, you know, it's a matter of civilization in terms of, you know, how you express certain things, etc., etc. Which goes for both sides, of course. But are we facing a clash of civilizations, which is going to perdure, which is going to last for a very, very long time? And I mean, then the chances and the hopes are not very, very, very good. And an additional question, I mean, you know, there are quite a few countries in Europe, members of the EU also, recognizing the Palestinian state now. I mean, well, Slovenia might follow that path. But would you add something to it? I mean, we all know, I mean, the arguments, the pros and cons. Thank you very much.
Very important two questions. The first one about the clash of civilizations. No, that's exactly what I'm trying to say. There is not any clash of civilization, because I think there are so many Muslims, decent people, that are against this kind of mass killing that is carried out by the global jihad. It is not among civilizations. It's in the Muslim civilization, because it's Islamists who do not kill Israelis or Slovenians. They kill their fellow Muslims or their fellow Arabs. They kill Kurds, they kill Shiites, they kill Sunnis. What happened 2 days ago in Nigeria, in a mosque? I don't know how many of you, it is not in the headlines, but 120 people were killed, Sunnis, in a mosque, by Islamists. It's happening in Pakistan and Afghanistan, not every day, but every 3 days. So it's not among the West and the East. It's a big mistake. I don't accept, with all the respect, the Huntington theory about clash of civilizations, because the real clash is in the Muslim society between Islamists and the majority of Muslims. And why I'm saying it? Because unfortunately I don't find that the moderate Muslims that are supposed to be the majority fighting against. I don't see them. I don't know why. I mean, it's something which is beyond my knowledge. But they are not fighting. They are suffering. They are killed. But they are not fighting. But it is not between Slovenia and the global jihad. It's not between France or the United States and the global jihad. It's between Muslims and the global jihad. And this is the real clash that is taking place right now. So that's why I'm saying I don't know. I mean, I can put the facts on the table. I'm not sure, with all the respect to myself, that I can give all the explanations. I'm not. We have to look at it. I can tell you one thing. I conducted the research about minorities and so on. It's not going to be politically correct what I'm going to say, but that's what I am. I'm warning you. I conducted the research about the Muslim minority in Israel, a comparative study, and the Muslim minorities in Europe, because they complained Israel is an apartheid state. Apartheid state. And let me tell you, generally speaking, in Israel, the Muslims are doing much better than the Muslim communities in Europe. But this is not the point. This is not the point. I mean, but people say an apartheid state. No idea what they're talking about. They're speaking about an apartheid state. Just something. The ex-Israeli president was sentenced to 7 years in jail. What is it connected to the Israeli Arabs? I'll tell you. First of all, I'm not proud about him, but I'm proud about the rule of law. I'm proud about it. No one has an exemption. But the presiding judge, out of 3 who sent him to judge, was an Arab citizen. It was a non-issue in Israel. Nobody even mentioned it. This is an apartheid state. Come on. What are you talking about? I'm not telling it to you, I'm telling it generally. But the point is, let me continue with my comparative study. What I found out very interestingly in two places, Germany and Britain, that other Asians, mainly Hindus, who came in the very same time, like the Muslims, are doing much better. How come? I mean, they are colored just like me. They were discriminated just like the Muslims. Discrimination is part of the deal. We cannot ignore it. How come that they are doing much better? I'll give you my answer. My answer, I mean, there is not any genetic difference between Muslims and Hindus who came from the very same place in India. The explanation is, and I told you that I'm not going to be politically correct, is cultural, but to be specific, status of women. If you deliberate the women, you are not oppressed anymore. As long as you oppress your women in every society, even in my society, where I'm coming from, the Jewish society, if you oppress the women, you are oppressed. You are lagging behind. But I know that it's much easier to blame the whole world, and mainly Zionism or Israel, and colonialism. Come on, what about self-criticism? I did it to my community. I want others to do it to their community. I want them to free their women, and the women are oppressed in the Muslim world. And let's face it, and if we want to know why the Muslim world is lagging behind, this is the main reason. But it's not politically correct to say it. I say it.
Please.
One more, I owe you one more thing about Palestinians to be recognized as state. I don't mind. I mean, I recognize them as a statehood. The only one point is that they want it in order to escape the peace process, because it was on the table, and they rejected it. And in order to achieve the support of the public, global public opinion, then they go to this kind of recognition, which is counterproductive to peace, because in order to achieve peace, we have to tell the Palestinians 2 states for 2 peoples. Say it, I don't hear it. I want Europe to tell them 2 states for 2 peoples. I don't hear it, unfortunately. Recognition? What for? In order to continue with the refusals? Counterproductive.
שלום, מר ימיני, ברוך הבא בלוביאנה. אני תיאשה ברחובניק, יש לי 2 שאלות בשבילך. First question is, has the third...
I will have to translate.
Has the third intifada started in the recent events in Jerusalem? This is the first question. And the second question is, I thought that I could use this opportunity to ask you for some advice. I have a lot of good friends. They're smart people, but they do not understand Middle East conflict. And I always try to tell them, what I tell them is approximately similar to what you are telling today. But do you have any advice how to convince them, how to see for them to see a better picture of Israeli-Arab conflict? Thank you.
Thank you. First of all, about the third intifada, I just don't know. You know, we are living in the Middle East. I mean, I live in the Middle East, and the Middle East prophecy is not part of the deal, unfortunately. So I just don't know. I wish I could tell you that I know something. I know that there is a very famous book in the United States that took 3 groups, and it was called, it endured 3 decades, and it's very interesting because the professor, Philip Tetlock, his name, he took 3 groups, one of professors, academics, experts, one of journalists, and one of monkeys, who could predict the future, and he specified in the story of the collapse of the Soviet Union. And let me tell you that the best group was of the monkeys, the second best was of the journalists, the last one to know what is going to happen was of the experts, the professors. Now, why I'm saying it, not because I'm clever, I'm not. I have no idea. I just know that I don't know. Some people don't know that they don't know. I don't know. I do hope that there will not be a certain intifada because it will be counterproductive to both sides. Generally speaking, Palestinians will suffer more, unfortunately, because yes, Israel is stronger. And I am not going to apologize. I'm not going to apologize. And it's not. It's a big mistake. It's not Israel, the mighty superpower of the area against the small Palestine. It's not. Because it's Israel, a small country, surrounded by enemies that some of them do not even recognize the right of Israel to exist, unfortunately. So it's not. So Israel just has to protect itself. That's all. I mean, we have to protect. It doesn't mean that I support every policy of my own government. It's not. I'm not. But it means something else. I know. I just want to know the basic facts of the conflict. And this is my advice to you, with people. That's why I wrote my book. It was just published. It's going to be published in English. I want people, everyone is allowed to his own ideas. Not everyone is allowed to his own facts. But we are living in an era of narratives. And I know that when someone is telling me narrative, I know that he's going or to sell me a lie or one more justification to mass killing of global jihad. I know it. When someone is telling me a narrative, I know he's going to manipulate me. Not anymore with narratives. We have to strive. It's not easy, but we have to strive for the truth, for the real facts. And I'm presenting it. What I presented here was not even 1 promille of the facts that I'm presenting about humanitarian parameters of the Palestinians. Just the opposite of what people say about it. Not according to me, according to the World Health Organization, according to the World Bank, and so on. Not according to me. But people don't know the realities, and they describe the Palestinians like if they are living in concentration camps. It's a lie. And so on, and so I want people to know it's not easy. My fight is only for one thing, not for any political view. It's for people to know the realities on the ground. Sometimes I don't like it. Sometimes it's what I'm saying is against my government, but I want people to know the realities. In the very same way, in my country, when I write in my newspapers, I'm quite critical against my government. Because of here and there, also because of the settlements, but I can do it because I live in a very free society. But I do have a problem, I do have an issue with the global media and the global academia. I do have a problem. And that's why I wrote my book, The Industry of Lies. It's factual, it's mainly factual.
Are there any questions? Mr. Vošnjakova, do you have any comment? Okay. Yeah. Now the last which we can also to ask is regarding the Arab Spring in the Middle East. You mentioned in the beginning about the Arab Spring, and now if we are talking about the Arab Spring, do you think the era after they follow the Arab Spring, you say that Arab winter, in this Arab winter, how Israel see the view of the region now, especially regarding Syria, because Syria and Lebanon is your neighbors and very important for your security and for the peace process also.
Well, I don't want to be give the impression that I'm very pessimist. Let me tell something which is a bit optimistic, a bit. I spoke about the Arab Spring that turned to be, unfortunately, to a global jihad winter. But look, for example, and I want to give, for a change, a good example, what happened in Tunisia. And we know that the Nahda party took over at the beginning. And we know that by a very democratic process, a new secular party took over. And yes, it makes me optimistic because it means that it is possible. It is possible. And it's very interesting because there is something which is connected to something that I just said. what is the difference between Tunisia and some other Arab countries or Muslim communities? You know what? It's very interesting because I had 3 visits to Tunisia. The difference is the status of women. I don't know how many of you know the Tunisian society, but in Tunisia, the status of women is equal by law. It's a kind of imposed feminism, in a way. It is very interesting because there is a connection. Maybe, I just don't know. I mean, maybe there is a connection between the status of women and the ability of the society to overcome the consequences of the Arab Spring and to turn it to something which is positive. Maybe they can present a positive example to some other parts of the Arab and Muslim world, maybe. So I want to be optimistic in a way. Now, the same is going with Syria and Iraq and ISIS. I just hope as a human being that so many Muslims and Arabs will understand that it is the tragedy of them, of the Arab world, and will not supply so many justifications. Oh, it's a kind of, because when I hear this kind of justification, sometimes I think that ISIS is a kind of a protest movement that is trying to improve the life of Muslims. Come on. This is not the case, and we know that this is not the case, because what they want is to impose a dark regime, a brutal regime, and that's what they are doing everywhere where they take over, and you know. But I do hope, and I know because I think many of us read articles from the Arab media, and you hear the new voices that are saying self-responsibility, not externalization of the guilt, because it was the leading motive of the Arab world. And that's why I don't like, and I'm saying it, I don't like Edward Said, which is familiar to most of you. I don't like Edward Said because what he's doing is, well, it's the West. Well, everyone is to put the blame on, but not on us. That's the main. And I'm so glad to read some Muslim scholars who write against this kind of externalization of the guilt. Because in order to change, in order to bring new prospects, you have to take responsibility. I said, one of them, and the leading one, which is not easy to say, status of women. But it's not the only one.
Thank you very much. Do you have?
Can I say something?
Please.
Hello, Eric Dov. Well, my name is Polona Vitri, and it was very interesting interview last night on television, interviewed by one lady who is very good interviewer in this country. And the gentleman was also a journalist like yourself, and he was coming also, I think, from, I don't know what part of Israel. But he said, well, in the end, she asked him, do you see the solution among Israeli-Palestinian conflict? And he said, you know, it's a wonderful idea which is in my mind and also in the minds of my colleagues and probably followers. One state and two nations. So I was amazed, you know. I said, gosh, one state and two nations. So it's a fairy tale, perhaps. Yeah, but he said, no, this is what she said. It must be a fairy tale. And he said, listen, also before years and years ago, the fall of the Berlin Wall, it would be a fairy tale, but it is not. So explain me this fairy tale. Do you think it's a fairy tale?
Let me tell you something.
Did you hear it? Anybody hear it? Okay, people.
I don't know who is the guy.
No, I don't know either.
I'm proud.
Who was it? Who was he? Oh, he was Irish. I thought that the accent was a little bit Irish, but they interviewed him like that he's a great expert, you know.
Yeah, I know
because,
this.
I caught this admission only in the end.
Okay.
You know.
Let me
All
tell you
right.
something about just one word about the one-state solution.
Okay. Yes.
You know, when people sometimes challenge me with this kind of idea,
Yeah.
one-state solution, I said, yes, fair enough. You know what? Let's go for it. One-state solution. Yeah, just do me one favor. Just do me one favor. You know. Let me speak in a very emotional way now, not to be an academic. You know, we Jews, for so many times, we were in the head of the line. You know what? Do me a favor. I'm telling the guy, the school of mind of people who are telling me one-state solution. You know what? Okay, let's adopt it. But do me one favor. I don't want to be the first in the line. First of all, do it in Czech Republic and Slovakia,
Yes,
and then go to Yugoslavia. Remember, there was a state that was make it one-state solution, please. And then go to India and Pakistan and make it one-state solution, and then go to the USSR and make it one-state solution, and then, you know what, when you will have a great success over there and everyone will live peacefully, then come to us Jews and tell us one-state solution. Thank you.
תודה רבה.
Are there any questions now? No more? Yes, yeah.
I hope you enjoyed this lecture and discussion as much as I did. I would like to express my thanks Mr. Ben-Dror Yemini for his contribution to better understanding of the situations in the Middle East. At the end, I would like to invite all to the next lecture in January 2014. And short 15. It's a short gift for you.